Welcome to the Week in Sports Cars on the Marshall Pruitt Podcast, brought to you by Cooper Tires, brought to you by the Justice Brothers, and brought to you by the Demon of International Sports Car Reporting, editor of DailySportsCar.com. Who is that on the other end from France?
It's me, poolside from the south of France, and in the background you'll hear the loudest toad in the world. Anyway, now I genuinely thought it was the old Budweiser commercial when we popped out here, but with apologies for what is quite a shaky connection from the south of France, we're out here for the pre-season test of the European Le Mans series. It gets underway.
Oh, and we're going digital abstract already.
Yeah, prototyping GT cars here.
Wow. Okay. Well.
Oh, lovely.
We've got a shaky connection to start, and Graham has tried multiple devices. This might be the best we can offer, so if it continues this way, this might be a very succinct episode of the Week in Sports Cars, but we will do our best, as Graham sounds like he is being overridden by robots. So, all right, Mr. Goodwin, you are the man who, every week, chooses which of the multiple categories that we have presented to us. We have the WEC Asian Le Mans ELMS/ACO as one category put together by DSE's Ryan Kish. We have IMSA, we have our general question section, and we have fun as the official chooser of starting categories on the Week in Sports Cars. Where shall we go first?
Let's go where the action is right now. The action right now is with WEC AsLMS ACO, or specifically the ELMS here. So let's start with that, MP. Do you want to serve them up for me?
That is
like a manic Roger Federer?
Yes, as we have your manic frogs in the background. I love it. This is the Nature's edition, and if Graham goes quiet, it just means the giant king of frogs has emerged from the bog and taken him to the great sports car hereafter. Let's go to our friend, right turn lover, a just absolutely steadfast. He's been every single stint, not a single stint, not a double stint, every stint here, every week on the Week in Sports Cars. We have a right turn lover question, so thank you. He asks to open the show, will we ever see open-top prototypes back in top-flight sports car racing again? And says, well, I prefer the closed-top spaceships. I do miss the variety. Have you heard anything, Graham, about anything related to peeling the tops off and going back to seeing drivers work in the cockpit without obstruction?
In an era where Halo is a good answer, I'm afraid, is no. I don't see us moving back to open-top sports cars anytime soon, / anytime ever, is the honest answer. I will admit there have been, there's the advantages to the open-top sports cars, seeing the drivers work at the wheel. It's a wonderful thing. But actually, the look of the current cars is much better. I think they do look the better package. I think they are the more attractive. And certainly the last breed of open-top sports cars, but I'm afraid, right turn lover, I think we've probably seen the last of them, certainly in the time that I'll be writing about international sports car racing.
And we've just had our cat Rocky, who you might have heard get picked up on my USB headset since we use Skype for this. So between your frogs and my cat and your dropouts, where it might be a little bit like Mad Libs, for those who grew up with Mad Libs, where you just fill in the adjective or verb or whatever's needed to make a silly sentence, this could be the most entertaining episode we've ever done there. Let's go to Joe Acampora, who asks, with the new P1 rules coming out, I believe hypercars where Joe's pointing us, is it time for a rethink of GT convergence? Even with the continuation of Ford, I'm concerned about the long-term health of the GTE class. Why not just embrace full GT3 spec? Cheaper, more manufacturers, more privateers, more versatile, more accessible. Yeah, so we've been getting more of these, and I'll get into a couple of other ones as well, where there's just questions of if this hypercar thing, Graham, doesn't manifest the way we've been told it will. should there be a backstop by the ACO and FIAWEC to whether it's a plan B, C, or Z, or Z for our international listeners, that might include a fortified GT type thing to take over where top-tier prototypes might have failed? And you could also probably throw in some news that we read today from the intrepid Gary Watkins about yet another change, yet another walking back of a plan for hypercar in terms of regulations.
Yeah, I will. I mean, good job by Gary today reporting for Autosports on where he believes the changes will come with the latest, and let's hope the last iteration of regulations for hypercar to accommodate those road-going cars. That means the likely increase in the minimum weight to, I think he wrote, being 1,150 kilos, which strikes me as somewhat, how can you put this, porky. The removal of movable aerodynamic devices, a whole range of other things as well. I'm not a happy bunny, I'll be honest with you, about the current state of affairs with this level of negotiation. And I do wonder, unless we've actually got in the bag that we don't know yet, multiple, and by multiple I mean somewhat more than two, manufacturers that due to take on board the hypercar regulations within a reasonable stretch of time, then I am at the stage now where I'm just about ready to say, guys, we need to put a full stop here. We need to walk away from this, take a look and see whether or not we're happy with what we have created. It does feel a little bit like Frankenstein's monster. How long can you keep to that vision whilst the vision disappears in front of you? It needs now to actually have takers. If the takers aren't there, I think it's time to pause, and I think it's time to think again. There is still an opportunity for some degree of global coming together. It doesn't have to be one thing. It doesn't have to be hypercar or DPI or Class 1 or whatever. It just needs to be somewhere where there is a performance band that is identified. If you're confident that you can actually BOP current cars, road-based hypercars, prototype-based hypercars, and for that matter, we've seen now acknowledgement that DPI could be there, I don't see why that's a bad thing. The one thing that remains to be seen is just how many of those takers would be prepared to commit to a full championship. I think it's time for us all to take two steps away from it, put our prejudices aside as to what is the best way forward, and acknowledge that actually, you know what, this is difficult. There is a reality on both sides of the Atlantic right now. Reality number one is hypercar is going through some real troubles right now. There's no doubt about that. They believe they've got a solution. I hope they're right. There's only going to be one measure, and that measure is going to be, have you got the teams and cars? Give us Kilby, by the way. It delivers to me a delicious homemade curry as we speak right now. But the other side of things is we're now getting to the stage where our friends on your side of the Atlantic, MP, are beginning to hit the point where they're not going to get new manufacturers coming forward between now and 2022 when their next rule set kicks in. We are at that point now. Your piece on Ford was mesmeric in terms of laying out the difficulties that now face them, the realities that face them in the industry. And I think maybe now we're at a point in time where everybody involved needs to sit down, deal with the new realities, because they're very different from what we were dealing with 2, 3, 4 years ago, and discuss what might be a better way forward. It is a brand new day, it is a brand new debate, and it's a brand new world in the automotive industry. It's time to start putting aside the unenlightened self-interest that we've seen part of from just about every major motorsport organisation, and to realise actually what we've got right now is international motorsport at the highest level in sports car racing, fighting for its very life.
It's a new day. Yes, it is, as I bring my favorite WWE tag team into the mix here. So maybe a couple follow-ups here from me on this, Graham, and maybe a little challenging as well. First of all, you mentioned at least 2 manufacturers. In theory, if we can get Aston and Martin to split up, well, maybe we got 2 right there. I'm not sure that's a good thing, though.
Rolls and Royce.
See, we've got 4 already. Bent and Lee. See, we are up to 6. I think of what happened with IndyCar as a parallel here in the late 2000s, primarily the late 2000s, then into the early 2010s, the early teens, where they were in a position with the formula that they had, while it was successful and, frankly, very inexpensive, it was just getting to be long in the tooth. I realized that the WEX situation with LMP1 is different. There is a somewhat robust LMP1 non-hybrid privateer group that we have today. Not crazy big in terms of numbers, but there's some health. Obviously, P1 hybrid, the manufacturer side, has completely collapsed. Thanks to genuine thank you to Toyota for staying in, even though they're fighting among themselves for the championship. But similar parallels to me, where there was a decision made that, hey, we need to embark upon something new. And in IndyCar's situation, that announcement from the series, hey, it's time, we've decided, this is what we're going, this is the date that we're aiming towards, ended up getting moved back and pushed back a bit. And finally, by 2012, the current formula, that is now itself getting to be a bit of an old dog, Graham, is it's still working, still functioning, but there's definitely a feel that there's a need for something else new. They've since announced plans that coming for 2021, 2022. So the reason I mentioned this is we have a situation where the sanctioning body, based on some feedback from the paddock and manufacturers, but also driven by and large by their own thoughts and beliefs, said, hey, making a change, it's going to cost money, as these things always do, but the time is here, it needs to happen. And then there was enough pushback to where the sanctioning body recoiled a bit and said, okay, well then not right now. And there was a big wave of couldn't survive it, the costs would kill us, no way we could make it happen. And so what ended up happening, come 2012, Graham, was pushed back a few years. In theory, it gave teams a little bit more time to save money, to buy new this, new that, all the aforementioned expenses. It still ended up being far more expensive than anyone projected. The series said, oh, these are all the numbers that we expect to hit. This is actually going to be a cost savings. Everything's going to be wonderful. And it ended up being a very costly thing. There were supply issues. There was a whole raft of things that made the introduction a mess. And so I have to some degree, similar feelings right now with where hypercar is headed for 2020. Again, we're in April of 19. September of 20 is when these cars are supposed to be taking the first green flag. In theory, these cars will be testing for the first time this time next year, 12 months from now, but not much later for those who want to feel comfortable. There's a very small window, as we've mentioned before, for getting rules done, cars made, etc. But like you, and I think as we were seeing reflected in the growing number of questions each week of, should they maybe reconsider? Should they maybe go all GT? What other kind of plans might they fashion? I think there's a growing concern of, do they really know what this is going to be? Because from what they initially announced and then followed up with more clarity, there just seems to be a constant flipping of the coin of, hey, this week we're adding that. Oh, and this week we're taking away this other thing we said we're going to do. There's no way a manufacturer can go and build a car in this state of not only confusion, Graham, but constant change. And change
absolutely
does not happen in a situation like this where you're creating a vast shift from the present norm, this change does not happen unless the current situation does not come forth unless there is great confusion or instability. And those are not the things that you pivot from to establish a new, leading type of leading type of formula. So my question is, and maybe the pushing back part a little bit on what you mentioned, I don't disagree that in a perfect world, manufacturers, teams, everybody should think of the greater good, come together, join in with the ACO and FIEWEC and say, whatever we need to get this done, let's get it done. That's how things should work if there is or was a feeling that was sweeping all parties involved, the current manufacturers, those who are investigating, might be in. I think that would happen, Graham, if there was a general sense that this is headed in the right direction. We might not all be getting exactly what we want, but we're getting close. Therefore, let's put aside our personal interests for the greater good. The thing that I think I'm seeing, and as Gary's great reporting has been supporting yours and your team, Marcus Schurig from Germany and such, is we're not at that place. There's no common, we're all agreeing that yes, we've reached that place where we can put aside the smaller differences and agree to something bigger and greater. Let's all give it the green light. We're going to go with whatever you say, sanctioning body on these new rules. I think what we're seeing, this frequent chaos, is because a general feeling is they're too far away, and the individual interests differ far too much to come to that proverbial meeting table, give everyone the thumbs up, and sign on. So that, to me, is the thing where you go, if that's true, can that be improved? Or is this a sign that we might never get there?
Well, the odd thing is we've had one major move that could have signaled one side of that coin, but potentially signals the other side. That move was 3 manufacturers grouping together to lobby to have the road car-based hypercars included in the regulations. Now, you would have thought, would you not, that having been successful in that, that there would therefore be projects to come forward as a result of having been successful in that endeavour, which they were. We've now had the hypercar regulations delayed, if you like, and certainly rethought to accommodate that. So what have we got? We've got Aston Martin, and I think both you and I spoke to David King from Aston Martin Racing at Sebring. Makes it very clear they are very interested. They need to see those regulations. But I was taking... I've known David for some time. He is as straightforward a guy as you could possibly imagine in motorsport and the automotive industry. And what I felt I was being telegraphed there was that they were very interested, but probably not from the start of those regulations. McLaren were the second of those organisations. I do not see any immediate prospect of McLaren bringing something forward. And the main reason for that, as we've discussed on weekend, is that they need to sort out their program in Formula One first before there's any real prospect of unlocking, a quantum number of euros to fund a second program. Then you get the third one, and this is the big ticket item. That's Ferrari. So what's going on with Ferrari? Are Ferrari ready to come forward with a program based on a near future road-going hypercar into sports cars? I would love that to be true. That would be a game changer with the FIWC and Le Mans. Or are Ferrari doing what they have done time and time again and being Machiavellian about this, and you profile debates about the shape of motorsports to influence their political machinations with Formula One? If they are doing that, oh, damn them. It's happened before. They've used IndyCar before that in that regard. They've used sports cars more than once before in that regard, and it's getting to be a very old hand. So time now for at least one of those organisations, having made, the changes that they've requested, to come forward and say, we're in. We're not hearing that. And I think what we've got at the moment is, I think we've got Toyota waiting patiently for those regulations. They made it very clear at Sebring as well that they needed that decision of those regulations right now. They may well have those regulations. Let's make that clear. They may well have that document. It may well be that what Gary's written about is a formal document that we've not yet seen. And it may well be that I'm next on somebody's list to give a copy of that document to. I'm in the right place to achieve that this week. And I believe there is a second party, and I don't think it's any of the ones that we've been mentioning so far. I think I know who that second party is, and it is not a major OEM. It is a major name in motorsports, but it is not a major manufacturer. I think the reason why they are clinging by their fingernails to these regulations and to the timescale is that they do have in their pocket right now two organisations that say they can go against, broadly speaking, the timetable that you and I have actually discussed, at least with an initial program, perhaps an early kind of investigative program ahead of a full program in year two. I'm going to have a sniff around over the next couple of days, and I hope in time for the Week in Sports Cars next week that we can start to talk to you about who that second party is. I think they're there. I think it's real, but boy, oh boy, do we need to start to see some confirmation of what's coming forward at the moment, because there is a crisis of confidence in the ability to produce these regulations. That is not a good place to start when everything relies now not around just those programs coming forward, but about being able to balance the performance of some very different cars. We need to start building that confidence basis right now. And I should tell you, as literally as I'm speaking, I'm looking at a message coming in. And bear in mind, this has not been broadcast live. So it's not in response to what I'm saying, but it might just as well be. There might be a very interesting conversation to be had in the next couple of days.
Well, look at you, you little teasy thing. We are 20 minutes into the show. We've gotten through 2 questions. We give ourselves about 90 minutes or less, depending on the strength of our connection. Let's go ahead and motor through some more for you. Let's go to Jeffrey Barr, who asks, you explained that the Aston Martin Vantage GT3 version could be converted to GTE spec in 5 hours with 5 guys. Do you know what time is needed, and how many guys does it take with other manufacturers? Porsche, BMW, Ferrari, etc.
I meant, and I apologise, Jeff, I did read this question earlier and forgot to go and ask the guys who definitely know, and that is JMW Motorsport. They are here at Paul Ricard this week, and they did that. You'll recall, I'm sure, that their car was delivered as a GT3 Ferrari in the days and weeks before they won the Le Mans 24 Hours GTM as a GTE car. I don't believe it's terrifically complex for a Ferrari, but I will find the answer for that one, and I promise you that I will bring that answer back for the Week in Sportscast next week. So we will hold over that part of this question. The answer, by the way, for Ford, for Porsche, for BMW is very simple. It cannot be done. Those cars are purely GTE cars. They cannot be converted to GT3 specification. It's simply not within the orbit. The Porsche in particular has the engine in a completely different position. You remove the bodywork, the rear bodywork of that Porsche, it looks like there's no engine there. It's an incredible difference if you're used to seeing a racing 911 when you see the RSR unclothed, as it were. And we've got a number of them here at Paul Ricard this weekend. So the answer is very simple. What it looks to me like is at the moment Ferrari and Aston Martin have actually got something of a market advantage. It's certainly, and apologies for the advantage pun there, it wasn't intended, but it's certainly the numbers of those cars that are being shifted in GT3 and or GTE form seems to indicate as well that that was the correct way to go. Let's wait and see.
Let's wait and see. Graham's favorite expression. All right, we're going to go to Johnny Schultz, who says it looks like this season could be Fernando Alonso's only one in the WEC. If he really moves on after Le Mans, how does that make the ACO and their concessions made for him look?
The answer is really simple. Frankly, they were trying to play to a strong suit that they knew they had. I don't have a particular problem with them pushing the Alonso theme. It's opened up sports car racing to some new audiences. Some of the rather blunter communication that's gone with it, including, frankly, a not particularly smart tweet this week that talked about whether or not he was the greatest WEC star of them all. Not really smart. Sorry. That's yeah, absolutely, Christophe Bouchou. What I would say is this. Have I shared with you, by the way, my view of who should replace him?
No.
Oh, now, I had a conversation with someone who could be in a position of influence here, and it was quite an interesting response. I think the person that should replace him is your friend and everybody's friend, Juan Pablo Montoya. For two reasons. Now, bear in mind, Juan Pablo has driven an LMP1 car. He tested the Porsche, I seem to remember, a couple of years ago in Bahrain at the hilariously named Rookie Test. But consider this. We have this year the now unveiled McLaren effort in IndyCar for the Indy 500 for Fernando as he pursues his Triple Crown, for which he needs now the Indy 500 to complete. Now, the odds are he will not be successful this year in doing that, which means you roll it forward to 2020, where you would guess, if that's still important to him, and my guess is it is, he'll have another crack. And that opportunity will come in the month of May 2020, correct?
That
means
it should be. Well, I mean, he's here. He's actually, we're recording this on a Tuesday. He's currently testing at Texas Motor Speedway for the first time in the brand new McLaren purchased Delarty W12 Chevy that they'll be competing in. And then coming back here a little later in the month at Indy to test, and then competing in his second Indy 500 in the month of May.
So let's presume for a moment that he is unsuccessful in 2 attempts. By May 2020, should Toyota have filled that seat and more with the ample posterior of Mr. Montoya, that means that just a few weeks after Fernando Alonso had his and didn't win the Triple Crown, that Juan Pablo Montoya, another man with 2 of the 3 in his hands already, could have the opportunity in June 2020 to snatch it from his grasp, and to do so in the Toyota that by that stage Fernando would have rejected. Now, wouldn't that be fun?
That would be extremely good fun, my friend.
So that's my view, is that Fernando Alonso, I think Fernando has done great things in terms of expanding the reach of the WEC to audiences that, frankly, other than the fact he was there, and he still is here, that other than that would not have given it a second look. Like very many areas of fan interest, and this doesn't just apply to motorsport, any sports, frankly, any other area of popular culture life, we've all got our bubbles, and Formula One famously has a bubble. Sports car racing has a bubble as well. I think it's great that he's here. He's bringing new audiences to it, and we're seeing those audiences really enjoy it. And I think some of those audiences, when he goes, will stay.
There we go. Let's see. Why don't we go to our new friend, with our favorite name, Michael Metropolis. Hi, Mike. Thanks for sending in another question. Michael asks, what are the odds that the new hypercar regulations will bring back more tire manufacturers to the top class at Le Mans? Says, I would love to see Bridgestone, Dunlop, etc. join Michelin in the fight for overall victories. Have you heard rumor, Mr. Goodwin, of other brands wanting to take on the French Titans?
It's a very simple answer. Nobody will be taking on the French Titans if indeed French Titans are successful in bidding for what will be, if things go the way that they're intended, a single tyre formula. That is part of the formula that is designed to bring down the budgets.
For
hearing as well
is
we may well be staring in the future.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
I was trying
for
to
everybody.
Fill in the void when your connection dropped. I'm trying to fill in just random words for fun.
The helicopter, stepladder. The answer is it's going to be single tyre formula for LMP1, and I suspect with the possible exclusion GT Pro, we might be looking at single tyre formulas for the other classes too, which would be a darn shame, because right now in the ELMS, and for that matter in the FIWC, we are in the thick of what is welling up to be quite the tyre war in LMP2. With 18 cars for the LMS this weekend, I'm looking forward to exactly what we're going to be seeing there in terms of longevity and pace from those tyres. So I'm afraid, really sorry, Michael, but you are going to be disappointed. Might we see somebody other than Michelin bid for that contract? It's possible. I think not.
Okay, so we are, Mr. Goodwin, we're a little over roughly a half hour in. We'll still have a whole heck of bunch more awesome WEC, AsLM, ACO, you name it type stuff to get to. So we're going to press on regardless. Our pal Smoking Puppy 841 asks, second part of a two-part question. JMW Motorsport to enter LMGTE AM in 2019-2020 FIA WC rumors and updates, please?
I think the answer is that prospect was taken quite a way down the line by Jim McWhirter, who owns JMW Motorsports and owns the remarkable succession of beautiful yellow Ferraris, and for that matter,
hamburgers and hot dogs.
European Le Mans series down through the years. Hamburgers and hot dogs. However, what he has now is a package for this season. And I sat down for some time with Jeff Siegel, who's a part to that package with Wei Lu, who is his latest driver coaching client. They are two parts of the triangle this year for JMW Motorsports. That is about taking Wei Lu to Le Mans. That is his passion. That is his dream, and that's what this program is all about. That's how you pay the bills in international sports car racing. So for the moment, my belief is that will not happen for 2019-2020. That said, if Wei Lu managed to progress and enjoyed his European adventure, as no doubt he's going to, certainly having a great time here at Paul Ricard, who's to say that he wouldn't want to a team W Motorsports and perhaps think about next season for WC, and a guarantee that will take him to the Le Mans 24 Hours. It's still a dream. It's still there. My belief is we will not see that, though, for 2019-2020. There are, though, still going to be some surprises and some positive surprises in terms of what I expect we'll see in the WC entry list for next year.
Go to one here I might be able to answer quickly. Comes in from our pal Mateus Longo. He says, hey guys, I couldn't send this right after Super Sebring weekend, so I'll shoot it in now. It was the first time I could see the Toyotas against the non-hybrid LMP1s, and what I noticed in the approach to the hairpin, that the behavior of the Toyotas was completely different to everyone else. It looked like they were not pushing at all. No hard braking in the entry and no risks on the curbs exiting. The LMP2s and GTEs were always on the edge, both in braking and exiting the turn. Even the privateer LMP1s were not that aggressive, and I guess it was because the fuel limit per lap. Did you also notice this difference during the race, and do you also think that this may have hurt the competition? That's just a function that we've seen for quite some time, Mateus, with the hybrids in particular having to harvest, not only harvest energy coming into braking zones, but also the exact thing you mentioned about sailing, coasting, to meet the minimum fuel, to stay within the rules on the maximum allowable fuel consumption per lap. So knowing that there's a bit of a dual purpose thing going on here, not abnormal at all for what you saw. As for hurting competition, again, we've been in a place since Porsche left in LMP1 hybrid where competition is kind of sucked at the top level here, and yet the Toyotas, despite all of the regulation changes and efforts to slow them down and then to speed up the privateers, it's still just, there's too big of a conceptual gap to overcome. So, yeah, I mean, if you're showing up to a WEC race in the near term, hoping to see just a knockdown, drag-out fight between a Toyota TS050 and a Rebellion, for example, or whatever else, you're probably not going to be very happy. So, yeah, but nothing really out of the ordinary. Cool that you could see it in person, though. Graham, we're going to go to our pal Buddy Campbell. Hey, Buddy, who says, with Alpine branding their Oreca and G-Drive now working with Auris, I just struggle to pronounce that, could we ever see a version of something like DPI in Europe? And this feeds back to maybe our little opening soapbox of, what do you think, my man? What's the Graham Goodwin sense of where we're going to end up ometer at today on whether hypercar is going to be hypercar or whether something much closer to IMSA's DPI could actually be the final product to replace LMP1?
The honest answer is I don't know, and I'm less sure and less certain than I've been for some time, but I think this is slightly different. Alpine, very tiny part of a very large group, the Renault-Nissan group, of course. Auris, emergent force in the limousine and luxury vehicle industry in Russia, with some export markets coming online. Inside the sports car chat.
Hello.
Roman,
hello. Good to have you back.
Hi, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm hoping you can. We had Roman on the Inside the Sports Car Paddock podcast this week, and I have to say, Roman, I thought some of the stuff he told me a little off mic, absolutely brilliant stuff in terms of business model behind that brand, and linked in no small part with international sanctions against his home country. Lots going on with that brand. I think the openness now, the opportunism we've seen from both Alpine with Signatech and Auris with G-Drive Racing and LMP2 is a very good way to draw in those lower budget aspirant brands into sports car racing. It's something that has been missing. We've sort of stumbled in there with the rather French way of allowing Signatech to do that with Alpine, but now Roman Rusinov has, basically kicked the door wide open, thrown in a stun grenade, and come forward with the state limousine maker of Russian
hamburgers and hot dogs.
I think it's a good move. I think actually bringing brands in, bringing in, brands that perhaps are less familiar, if that gives people a stage for it, wonderful. Wonderful. If we have an Auris safety car, that'd be great to see that drifting around with Yannick Dalmas, wouldn't it? A massive, lengthy Rolls-Royce, Russian Rolls-Royce kind of equivalent.
Annexing I think Toyotas, yes, I completely agree. Wait a minute, sorry.
But it for me, and by the way, the one other thing I would say here, because you and I, we've discussed it on the show before. I know that some other friends out there in the world of the media and in terms of internet comment poured scorn upon it, confirmed by Roman Rusinov to me that they did investigate the viability, the possibility of a DPI for the Auris brand. So Yabu sucks. The fact that it wasn't possible within the regulations doesn't mean to say that it wasn't something they looked to see whether or not they might do. And furthermore, they might still look to do that at some point in the medium-term future.
I love it. Okay, we're going to go to a submitter's name that has always perplexed you, Trowavosaurus, and I barely got it out there myself. Yes. Says, as the Le Mans entry list can have spots within it for teams showing confidence in and investing in ACO racing and growth through the regional feeder series, which teams that are new or small now do you expect to be making it to the big race in 1 or 2 years' time as an invitation? It says, we often have a lot of commentary of young drivers to look out for. So what about some of the young teams on the way up? Indeed it is.
That's a really good question. Well, we've got a couple of those teams taking the step up this year. Some of them, success or RM Sport will be going this year on the back of their success. their success in the European Le Mans Series in LMP3. They'll be there with an Oreca 07. Nielsen Racing is one to watch for. You might be familiar with them from last year as a Courier Cost Nielsen, but Nielsen Racing looking very good with their LMP3 programs, across the world, with Europe and Asia, with multiple cars. Watch out as well for the wonderfully named Cool Racing. Nico Lapierre taken on by the Swiss flag team this year. And they, I think, will be one to watch as things kind of move forward. Clearly very well funded in terms of their efforts. For me, and again, a team that will be making their debut this year, one of the friendliest teams in the European paddock, took the Asia Le Mans Series LMP3 title this year, will be bringing their new Ligier P2 effort to Le Mans and indeed to the ELMS into Europol. And our friends over on your side of the Atlantic should have an opportunity to meet with the, heavily German staffed, Polish flavoured, industrial bakery sponsored into Europol, Polish flag team, just lovely people, absolutely the kind of team that you would love to kind of come across in any paddock. They at the moment plan with their second Ligier. They have two Ligier LMP2s, one of which is still based in the United States. They should be doing in the LMP2 class the Laguna Seca race for IMSA and also the Petit Le Mans this year. So fingers crossed that those plans come to fruition. They've delayed their IMSA program to make sure that they're more confident of their abilities with the car over here in Europe. But I hope you get a chance. Fun, understated, quiet, increasingly polished, but not to the point where the polish is more important than the substance. And I just love them. I think they're just a great bunch of people to be around. There are Muslims, there are many more.
Are you trying to mix Polish and polish in the same sentence?
That was a
Lord
I'd missed that one, but that would normally be my kind of bag, wouldn't it?
Well, it sounded a little bit like you were being absorbed by the Matrix. Mr. Anderson had gotten to you, but maybe I misunderheard that incorrectly. Let's go to our penultimate WEC AsLMS question, and there's no hashtag here, so it might have just been used. Naturally. This comes in from Floodman11, who says, which configuration of Paul Ricard is being used this week at the ELMS test? Full Mistral straight, or are they putting in the chicane? I personally prefer the full straight.
We are.
Not I impersonally, but I personally.
Hashtag me personally. The answer there is that you're going to be a happy bunny, Flubman, because it is indeed the full straight, and they are tearing down there. As I said a little earlier in the show, we have 18 LMP2 cars for the full season of the European Le Mans Series, 41 cars on the full season list for the ELMS, and they are motoring. Lap record. P2 lap record went yesterday, fell to Anders Fjordbach from High Class Racing in their new Oreca. They've just switched over from Dallara P2 car to the Oreca P2, and Anders going great guns in that car. I'll bring you, I hope, next week some news of something we're going to be doing with Anders that we will bring to Inside the Sports Car Paddock. It is an absolute exclusive, something we've not done before, but I'm waiting for confirmation on being able to do this with Anders, who is a very typically understated Dane, but remarkably quick young man. And he took the LMP2 lap record. They're going to be quick. There is a tyre war. There's a war, frankly. It's going to be 18 LMP2 teams in what can only be described as a full-scale, full-on barroom brawl of a top class in an international sports car race. I cannot wait to call it with my good mate Johnny Palmer, who is at the moment sitting behind me in our little villa here in the south of France, drinking all the beer.
Please tell him to put on some pants, by the way. It's a little bit disturbing, but that's okay. It's just designing, that's all. We're going to close this category with something from Kiwi Chris 1709. My question is simple. Is the badge engineering of LMP2 machines really such a bad thing? If smaller, more obscure car brands like Alpine and Oris want to throw their dollars at what is essentially a marketing exercise, why the heck should we prevent that? It's not like they're using a car which isn't one of the 4 LMP2 options. And I love that because it speaks to common sense, where I think you might take this answer, Graham, we'll see, is bad isn't there. There's nothing bad for sure, Chris, where this has just been frowned upon, at least at the sanctioning body level, but apparently they're easing up on this now, is they wanted to reserve, quote, manufacturer involvement for the top category only, and if we have folks that are playing down in the kind of privateer, second tier level, in theory, they're missing out on dollars and funds and manufacturer activation, but who knows if in the deals that are struck to do this badge engineering, Graham, maybe they are commanding some serious dollars. What do you know? What do you think?
I think it's a very positive move. I think they made a big error in closing the door to aspirant manufacturers. Why would you do that? Why would you prevent a manufacturer that could be the next big thing from coming and joining the show? It was a mistake without a shadow of a doubt, and acknowledged, by the way, after a direct question, that it was a mistake. I think this is the right move forward. Whether or not they're doing it for the right reasons, I don't really care. We could have some real fun with this. And by the way, there will be those out there that say, our risk, Vladimir Putin, blah, 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 universally bad thing. Fine. That's your opinion, okay? It's not my opinion. I happen to think that actually this shows sound judgment by a team that has supported the championship for many, many years in promoting their product and indeed this racing product in their home market and into new markets. And I think that shows sound business judgment by all concerns. Don't think Aris are going to be a threat outside the Russian marketplace to the established players. Within the Russian marketplace, for lots of reasons very well explained by Roman Rusinov, they are now a threat. And I think this is an interesting way forward. I don't expect this will be the last small and aspirant brand that will look to make that step forward. And I agree with you. I think it's a very good move. The more the merrier. The more ideas, the more marketing, the more money, the more teams, the more opportunities to have more people telling other people what a great thing this is and what great entertainment this is. That can only be a good thing, can't it?
It can only be a good thing. Like, moving on to a new category, Mr. Official Chooser of such things. Where shall we head?
We've got to do IMSA, haven't we? We're staring down the barrel of Long Beach, and I think it's time to move stateside, to put on the red cap, to wave the stars and stripes, and say that all good things American are coming to, well, not a million miles down the road from you in California, are they, MP?
It's about 300 miles, 280 or whatever it is exactly. But it's a 1 hour. I'll be on a 1 hour and 20-minute flight tomorrow morning to John Wayne Airport in Orange County.
Yeehaw!
And then I will drive down to Newport Beach and spend about 2 hours capturing a My Racing Life and Career podcast with the hilarious, fascinating, memory like an iron trap IMSA longtime IMSA team owner and driver Jim Busby, and we'll move right when we're done there and head up to All-American Racers and pay a visit to our friends there. And it'll actually be my first time back since the Big Eagle passed. So I'm going to continue a little somewhat quiet documentary project that we are working on in partnership with the Gurneys. And then I'm going to move to where I forget which town, but I think Torrance, and we'll be capturing a podcast with my friend Nick Hunziker, who is a rather amazing artist and painter and apparel creator, and do a little podcast with him. And then I just solidified, while you were giving an answer here, that Thursday morning I'll be meeting up with a gentleman by the name of George Mack, who was the last African-American driver to compete at the Indy 500. And, just do a My Racing Life and Career episode with him in Long Beach Thursday morning. So, anyways, all kinds of fun. Woo.
And racing too. Well, let's kick off into the racing and into the stories that surround it. I'm going to put two together here and be on a general theme of Corvettes. Stuart Aldrich from Twitter. Hi, Stuart. And Josh Richard from Facebook. Josh asks, is there any news on the Corvette C8? Stuart asks, do you feel like Corvette racing will ever get back to the way they used to be, especially with the new C8 coming out?
For Josh, I have zero news for you, and it's probably because I have not spent the time that I should in asking folks who would tell me, but I have to believe the competition version of the C8 will be confirmed once they confirm the C8 road car is coming out. So, of course, the 24 Hours of Le Mans would be a wonderful and natural place to make that happen, but I do not know at present where the brand is expecting to announce to the world that the Corvette C8 that we have seen with lots of spy photos and the C8R, which we've also seen with lots of spy photos, is something truly confirmed and a timeline given for its just overall welcome to the world. So nothing for you there, unfortunately, Josh. Stuart, as for your question, as for will they ever get back to where they used to be, man, we're talking short memories, huh, Graham? I mean, these are the reigning, defending GTLM champs, I do believe. We've had 2 IMSA races so far this year. I know for one of the 2 Corvettes, it has not been a pretty year, effectively 2 more or less last place finishes. And the other entry is okay, but hasn't been in the midst of a glowing start to the season at the 2 endurance rounds. But yeah, as for ever get back, I mean, again, they're still the champs. I'd just say that, knowing that Long Beach tends to be a place where the Corvettes perform exceedingly well, they're hoping, having earned their 100th overall program victory not so long ago, I know that they have targeted hopefully earning their 100th IMSA win this weekend at Long Beach. So, it's all about BOP, as we well know. Before we get to luck and adversity and any kind of mechanical issues and such. So has certainly not been the start they were hoping for to begin 2019, but they should never ever be discounted or counted out, and provided BOP does not marginalize the C7Rs, they're always going to be a factor to be concerned about.
Let's group a couple here together. One from Alex Eichmiller. Hi, Alex. And one from Joe Van Garlen, both from Facebook. Alex says he's watching IndyCar at Barber as he types the question. Would love to see IMSA there. Obviously, schedule's been pretty consistent. Do you think IMSA at Barber would be a good show? Any chance on there being a schedule shake-up in the future? Whilst Joe asks about Portland International Raceway, experienced a revival of sorts in the last few years. What are the chances IMSA could return there as well? So 2 potential places that IMSA might go to. What do you think to either?
Alex, I think there's zero chance we're going to see IMSA at Barber. There are too many tracks that are currently awesome for them to consider going to Barber. And there's nothing wrong with Barber. It's just that we've had Grand Am there in the past. It was not something that I recall fondly. It's a little too narrow, I think, for the real hardcore racing that we might expect to see out of IMSA's categories. IndyCar does put on a really, really good show there, but just different creatures. So, I just wouldn't see Barber as really being a thing, and I don't know if the show would be super excellent. As for Joe's question, I must admit that's the one where I think that could happen, but it would most likely be dependent upon WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca falling off of the schedule. And knowing that attendance-wise, it might be the least subscribed on IMSA's season-long calendar of anywhere they go. Keep in mind, they also have a couple of GT-only events. Those are pretty awesome as well at Lime Rock and also at VIR. So if you think of all the various places, Joe, that IMSA heads, yeah, my home track, which I love, and this is all spoken with love, people just have not cared or turned out to see IMSA there. Where things maybe add to complications even more is this year, with IndyCar returning, and IndyCar actually racing the weekend after IMSA, so we have back-to-back Monterey trips with IMSA, then IndyCar. There is certainly a concern that some who might have been interested in going to IMSA but were on the fence might save their money and spend that on IndyCar's return after whatever it was, 15 plus years away. So, yeah, depending on the needs and wills of the paddock and also those looking after IMSA's bottom line, I could see how Monterey might be in jeopardy. And if that's the case, knowing that Portland is certainly trying to attract more top-line racing back, knowing that World Challenge kicked that off last year, then IndyCar followed, and that was a big, big success. I think there might be some fond memories of IMSA there as well in Oregon and southern Washington for folks to come down and take a look to much greater degree than maybe we would see at Monterey here in September. So, to use Graham's favorite expression, let's wait and see. We do not have a proper-looking crowd there. Come September, Joe, I'm concerned that IMSA might say, you know what, love the West Coast, but maybe we're going to go farther north. What I would not expect, though, Graham, is for IMSA to add Portland while staying at Monterey, knowing that would be 3 trips to the West Coast for a series that is by and large South Florida, Midwest. Again, I just really could not see 3 separate trips out to the West Coast. So I think they'd stick with 2. Long Beach isn't going anywhere. That's a staple. So probably one or the other.
We're going to go for 3 more group questions here in the IMSA world. First is around possible future programs. One part of this comes from our good mate Smoking Puppy 841 on Twitter. Asks about whether or not there might be further news about a couple of old rumours. Hyundai to enter DPI in 2020 with a 2-car factory program is that one. The other one comes from Sean Caldwell. And asks a similar question, but this time about 3GT. Thought they were working on getting another GTD program together. That's certainly what we heard from the team, isn't it, MP?
So Sean hasn't seen the 3GT program, Graham? Is that what he's saying here? He hasn't seen that program. He didn't see their wins so far.
No.
Amazing victory to kick off the 2019 season. Maybe. Oh, I get it. That's because they entered the Rolex GT series in Grand Am. Yeah. That was a much lesser thing promoted during the Rolex 24. Yeah, it's funny, Sean. I should really try and draw a line here and say that the team owner of 3GT, reputationally, someone who does not have a lot of fans among the paddock, media, former drivers, and that's fine. You know, most people don't get into racing to become a fan favorite. They do it because they are racers. The team itself, I absolutely loved. The folks in the garage, the folks engineering, even some of the folks managing it and such. I mean, for the most part, separate from the team owner, I thought that team was awesome. I thought what they did last year with the Lexus in IMSA GTD and the wins they had and just the overall success, I mean, they were really hitting their stride. So I am genuinely saddened that we do not have 3GT or Rocket Sports or RSR or whatever they've called themselves over the years I really do miss their presence and wish we did have them back. I have heard nothing about what they might or might not be doing to come back. I do know that they said that, we're sad to lose Lexus, but we got something else coming. I don't know if that was just speculation or if that was they were speaking with other manufacturers and thought something would come to fruition, and it didn't. Have heard nothing about them coming back, though. And, yeah, despite any misgivings with on the ownership side, this is a team that if a manufacturer wanted to have success with, they did prove that once they were given a car by Lexus that was capable of achieving meaningful results, didn't take them too long to get it there. I mean, they definitely had some struggles in 2017 with, a few too many mistakes in the pits and strategy, and, they shot themselves in the foot a few times, but we definitely saw by 2018 that was a really impressive program. So I'd love to see them back. As for the rumored Hyundai thing, been hearing the same thing for a while. I haven't heard that it is a go, but I would love to hear that it isn't dead. That's the thing I would love to hear most. And I actually called someone this morning before actually reading your question just to try and get a little update to find out if the conversations and interest that had been spoken last year by the brand is still a thing, if it's still moving forward in any way. So, provided I can get an update here, hopefully I will provide that on a future episode.
Good stuff. Penultimate one theme is about Long Beach. This is for IMSA, at least. And again, a double-edged question. The first comes from Don Gregory from Facebook. What changes, if any, would you make to the current Long Beach Grand Prix circuit? Bring back the Linden Leap, perhaps, he asks. And the second part, again on Long Beach, comes from Flubman again from the WEC Reddit community. And Flubman asks, how important is being at Long Beach, Grimser? Over the past few years, we've seen races that have been stunted by safety car intervention, long debris clear-ups, and last corner parking lots. Is the market value from being at Long Beach worth the shortened race, damage bills, and an arguably poorer spectacle?
Interesting. Let's start with the first question. The Linden Leap would be the best thing ever. I'd absolutely love that. Having been there for, I think, 3 of its layouts, I've come to really enjoy what we have right now. Some of the other ones, well, granted, I was not there for the original one. There was no leap involved. But I think the first time I was there was roughly 1990, 91, somewhere in there. So, whatever it was there when the cars would go through a little bit of tunnel work through some car parks. And then also when they would head down the front straight, make the right little squiggle, left, right again, then head on to the back straight without the little tunnel. I like what we have now. I really do. I think the quality of racing is very high, plus the risks, the ability to make mistakes and set yourself back definitely remain. And that's one of the great things about going to a street race compared to a natural terrain course that has 50 to 100 feet between the edge of the tarmac and a barrier. So I'd actually say stick with what we have. As for IMSA and it fitting on the IMSA calendar and the crashes and the short duration and the spectacle, it is IMSA's. I would say number 2, Sebring number 1 without a doubt. Rolex 24 itself, I know, is a big and long-standing and very impressive event. There were lots of series that, well, not lots, but there were series that weren't IMSA that were there for quite some time that massively diluted its stature, specifically Grand Am. Grand Am was, while there were some good races, don't get me wrong, Grand Am being there, though, was just a feeling of, boy, we are not putting our best product forward in terms of endurance racing. So IMSA coming back, I think, it's really become a thing, a great thing. But Long Beach, just in terms of star power, in terms of manufacturer value, and here's where I think the greatest value comes from. and it trumps any of the other concerns about short duration and crashes. I mean, nobody makes them crash the cars. There are other series that race on the very same weekend where they do not manage to run into each other nearly as much or tear up as much equipment. So it's not I don't blame the track, knowing that there are other series that have far less carnage. And IMSA has had races, as did Grand Am, as have other sports car championships, have had many races there where it has not been a crash fest. So, but I would just say the biggest value, Graham, I think, is the marquee nature of their presence. It is by far the number one race on the calendar in that regard. We think of the Rolex 24. Well, that's IMSA's big season opener at the track that IMSA's owner happens to own. So it's great. Again, all kinds of great stuff, but it's them. It's a home race. It's a home game. We go to Sebring. Same thing. Amazing. All the stuff that we know, but it's a sports car event playing in front of sports car fans at a track that's really only used for sports car racing. Long Beach is the one time during the year where IMSA gets to go out to a major venue, a long-standing venue that isn't theirs, that they have been a part of now for a little while, but that has a very large crowd, a very enthusiastic crowd, and honestly, the drivers and teams get to feel and present themselves and look like rock stars. That's why so many folks want to crowd into the Long Beach schedule, because you go there and you feel important and you look important. It's why so many manufacturers and teams have massive, absolutely massive guest lists there, Graham, and that's taking nothing away from any other venue. You know, we talk about Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, which we all love. It's amazing. It's not something where IMSA teams are buying up blocks of 500 tickets and doing massive hospitality suites to accommodate everyone. And we can pick a couple other spots on the calendar, too, where we love the racing and all that stuff is great, but the energy and value that IMSA receives from being part of Long Beach, that's why they're there. That's why it will and should always be part of their schedule, in my opinion, for that exact reason.
I think we're going to finish this one off with one final IMSA question before we move on to our general and some of the fun stuff. This one comes from our good mate Russell from the USCR Reddit group. A couple of questions about teams with only one full season driver named. What happens next with Juncos? They only seem to have a driver lineup in place for the endurance events. Just announced a driver for Long Beach last week. Could they become an endurance only entrant? And then what happens next with the Heinricher MSR entry? Catherine Legg, named for the full season, but both Christina Nielsen and Bill Figueredo were listed as endurance-only drivers. Given GTD isn't on track again until mid-Ohio, might we see Jackie Heinricher in the car for the shorter length races?
First, I need to acknowledge that I love that we still have the USCR Reddit group. That's what it was initially announced as, United Sports Car Racing, and dang it, we are sticking to that original name. So Juncos confirmed today that their Indy Lights champ from 2017, who also did a handful of IndyCar races with them in 2018, Kyle Kaiser, will be back, joining Will Owens. I think we're going to see that as a more normal thing, Ruslar. To my great frustration, the great Ricardo Juncos, someone who I just have a deep passion for, he and they are struggling at the pro level to attract budgets in IndyCar and IMSA. So we have not seen a full season announcement for either program. In fact, we've only seen their IndyCar turn up for one of the 3 rounds and have not heard anything. I spoke with Ricardo at the COTA IndyCar event. He said, I got nothing on this side. We're talking to sponsors, but we've got nothing after this. On the IMSA side, we know that Will Owens meant to be in the car for the year, which is great. I think Kyle Kaiser will be in a few more times. I think Rene Binder and some Argentinian drivers will end up comprising Will's teammates at a number of other rounds. So I need to catch up with him this weekend, too, to get a feel for where IMSA is at for him in terms of subscription and sponsors. But I'm feeling far more confident with Ricky's Cadillac DPI VR effort than I am with where his IndyCar program might be headed. As for the MSR number 57 Acura NSX GT3, I'm not sure if we're going to see Jackie in the car again. Knowing that, whether it is Christina, whether it is Bia, there are some other drivers too, Shea Holbrook, Isla Agrin. There's no lack of talented women to consider for teammate with Kat in the, I guess, call them standard length rounds. It's these simple 2-driver lineups. So I don't know if we're going to hear about someone being named for, say, the full standard season alongside Kat, but I don't think this is going to end up being an issue. I do think it might be a fun curiosity to see who's in the car, who's driving with Kat, and then also, all right, who's driving alongside Will and whatnot on the Junko side. But I guess it's a better thing than will these cars turn up if they do not have someone, signing up for sure for the full season to be in them. I think the kind of race-by-race mystery thing, I think that's going to be the norm, and I don't think it's necessarily that bad of a thing. It certainly gives both teams more opportunities to create some news. Hey, at this round, this person's going to be in the car. And you go, great. For most teams, that's a single press release that goes out at the beginning of the year that says, here's the full-time lineup, here's the endurance driver, done. So, a few extra headlines, Not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Are we done? Graham, are we done with IMSA?
We're done with IMSA. I'm done with IMSA. Done with it.
Right here. I'm sick and tired of it. I am officially announcing my retirement, reporting on and covering IMSA for the rest. Yes, for the rest of this minute. So,
what are people going to do for the rest of the minute for quality coverage?
See, well, breaking exclusive scoop. There's all kinds of wonderful.
Well, let's move on to the wacky world of the weekend sports cars, general and fun.
Yes, I fully sign off. I co-sign here on that move. Are you okay? Are you having a seizure?
No, that's just the atmospherics. I'm going to kick off with one from Kevin Payne from Twitter. Kevin asks for book recommendations, history of US sports car racing following the recent release of books from IMSA, 50 years of the 1969 to 89 and Hurley Haywood books. Which other books should a UK-based racing book collector, he says, add to improve his knowledge of US sports car racing, and which might also hopefully preach value? I'm going to chime straight away in with a book that was updated this year and released at the Rolex 24 Hours, and that's my good mate J.J. O'Malley's history of the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. The original version of that book still available for a sensible price through various internet retailers across the world, and J.J. updating that book this year, and both of those now form a part of my growing collection. Any more that you can add, MP?
Of course. I'm staring at hundreds of books in my office here. Some of them might even hold value. Would say it is not inexpensive, but that maybe tells you that there is value to be had. Our pal Ken Breslauer, the long-standing head of communications at Sebring International Raceway, penned him a book a little while back on Sebring. It is a big old, definitely fortify your coffee table type piece, and I would recommend, if you can find that, buy it. It's not going to be inexpensive, but it is worth the purchase. I am looking at two other books and will admit to contributing to one of them, and would say that it is certainly, they are both fairly monstrous items. One is titled Prototypes, and it is about IMSA's GTP era, by and large. our friend Mike Fuller, Mulsanne Mike, was a part of that. Would certainly purchase that. It is glory.
That's an excellent book. It's an excellent book.
And then there was the follow-up that Mike did with another friend, Jim Martin, titled GTP Race Cars, which is another, I guess, a deeper dive with some specific marks that were truly transformational in GTP, whereas Prototypes was maybe a wider look at a lot of things. So those are two that jump out where I say, hey, if you want to learn about good old American sporty car racing, those would be two excellent purchases, albeit on more or less the same theme of GTP. Another thing I would mention, and it's probably an eBay item, they were once available in the final years of the American Le Mans Series. You could go to their website and buy them, and that would be a suggestion to wherever they might be. Probably eBay, but who knows, maybe some aftermarket secondhand booksellers. But go ahead and pick up some of the IMSA year books. I'm staring at... I probably have, 30 of them, and some of those are duplicates because in some I kind of use those frequently and they get worn out, and I like to have a nice one, and I'm a little bit weird like that. But I think going back to the debut season, I think I have all but 2 annuals, but there's just fascinating stuff in there. And so you can, in some cases, you can get race reports and read a lot there and find out quite a bit. So I would say that might be a very excellent thing to consider to learn more about American sports car racing. Prior to that, I mean, there's some other books I'm staring at here, and this maybe gets back into the 60s by and large, very early 70s. Lots of Can-Am content. And so if you just simply type in CAN-AM, in terms of your Google or whatever you prefer to browse with, Chaparral is another just name. I mean, I'm staring at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 books that I have on Chaparral. I might be mildly obsessed with the great Jim Hall and his creations. There's some great stuff to be had there. And let's see, there's another book that I have, which is a little more breezy, but I think there's an even better, more historical dive going back from the 50s through 1970. It's a book titled Vintage American Road Racing Cars. So I know a number of the recommendations here are kind of car vehicle based compared to just long flowing tomes about particular series and championships, but I'd say something in there might interest you. I'm looking at one more by Dave Friedman titled Pro Sports Car Racing in America 1958 to 1974, and that's a lot of glory contained in that book too. So hopefully somewhere in there you might find something that helps you learn about this wacky country of mine and our fascination with sports car racing.
That's a $300,000 book collection right there. Good stuff.
Also
absolutely
mine for $290,000, so no problem at all.
Right, we've got again 2 questions on a theme. And to everybody's delight, you know what's coming next. It's on the theme of the third presenter of the Week in Sports Cars, Dr., Professor, Sir, the Earl of all that is good, Christophe Bouchou. Adam Farrell asks one question. Right Turn Lover comes back with another. Right Turn Lover says he's evaluating the market potential for a series of Christophe Bouchou disc memorabilia. Yeah. What are our thoughts? Adam says, do you think Christophe Bouchou listens to the show and is therefore aware of his popularity revival? Can I suggest that either you see him in a paddock anytime soon, you stay away from any open toolboxes? I'm sure Christophe is fully aware of how popular he is through this podcast or anything other, and I can tell you straight away he doesn't care. He doesn't give a monkeys. As for memorabilia, I did actually hear brilliant idea that we all like, don't we? Trackside, when we're at any of the sports car races, one of the ideal ways of keeping up to date with a scanner, with an earpiece in. And I think what we could do is maybe market something with his image on the front and call that a CB radio.
Oh, Lord. No. No. That's way too nice. That's way too nice. Yeah, I did help somebody last weekend who asked for maybe an image or something to go with a potential kind of bootleg, self-created Christophe Bouchou T-shirt, and I believe that might be one of the questions the combined might have been from him. I just think, look, the most hated guy in sports car racing certainly deserves some sort of memorabilia. Now, granted, we're also learning, which is maybe not a total surprise, that this is a little bit of a retro most hated guy, meaning he's not really active today. Yeah, I don't know. I just love the fact that some want to celebrate a person they might not really know a whole lot from firsthand experience, yet feel the need that, whether it's a T-shirt, I don't know, maybe a mouse pad, but one where you use a heavy mouse and you just smash it on top of his face. I don't know. I've got ideas. Spike? They're all bad. Yeah, completely. Train your child, potty train your child with the face of stuff. Again, these are, we got options. So, yeah, I don't know. Hey, if y'all want to do it, we're happy to support it. And, anything that brings humor and mirth and, something that might be a little snarky, might have a little bit of an edge to it, I think we're down. I think we're fully in support of that. So count me in for buying something. I'll buy something if you make it. I don't know what, but I'll buy something.
Yeah, Ollie Gavin doesn't get this kind of treatment, does he? Ever.
But he deserves it. That's a new mission. We're going to take down Ollie Gavin.
Have I shared the fact Ollie gave me the best response to a question I have ever had with a telephone interview. And it wasn't a particularly searching question, but the answer he gave me was, "I'm terribly sorry, Graham. I'm going to have to hang up and call you back. Someone's just crashed their car into my house."
And rightfully so. Teach that guy a lesson, I tell you. No.
It was probably Bouchou.
Yeah, see, he was. He's trailing him all over the place. Yeah, I truly wish Ollie wasn't just such a delightful human being, because it'd be so much fun tearing him down. But anyways, yeah, hey, have fun. That's all we do here.
He's just too lovely. There you go.
All we're doing here.
Shall we move on?
Of course.
Let's move on. Let's have a quick look a little further down. Something completely different. Chris Humphreys from Facebook. They just add fuel, oil, water, go test. Or do they need and require a build process? It does rather depend on the requirements you've actually given to the manufacturer. Yeah. Was indeed at the factory a GT3 and GT4 building organization last week, that being McLaren, and watching the latest batch of McLaren GT3 cars. There were 3 in the works, and GT4 cars, there were lots in the works under construction. There'll be feature stuff to come on DSC, but I can tell you that the number of the GT4 car, the 574 car, was number 141. So 570 GT4s. Not all of those will be race cars. That is, of course, a car that is just as adequate to be used for track day. And yes, you can have a 570S GT4 as a turnkey car through McLaren's network of motorsport dealers. GT3 car, my guess is, for the most part, you'd either have some involvement in speccing the build of that car. Certainly you'd have some customer support in terms of the way in which you operate those cars. These are fiercely complicated pieces of machinery, and it is not at all unusual, particularly when these cars are new or at the start of their development life, for the major teams to send one of their technicians to assist with the build of those cars. But yes, I believe for the most part you can do exactly that. If you require that car to be delivered to be able to hit the track and run, then they will do that. If, however, you specify that perhaps you want certain parts of that build to be completed in your own workshop to assist you with the understanding, they'll do that too. This is a very customer of the sport.
would also say that I can think of few scenarios where a team would request a GT3 car or any car to be delivered and then used in true turnkey fashion. If we're talking, hey, we were late to order, something where the first race is coming up, we're going to have almost no time to dive into the car on our own. Could you deliver it to track X or wherever? Something for us to take and do a quick test and then go race. I would say that would be a scenario that comes to mind, but for the most part, I cannot think of a chief mechanic, crew chief, anybody that would say, hey, we're going to go run a car that we have not assembled ourselves and feel any confidence whatsoever that the vehicle will perform as expected, be completely safe. One of the great reasons that teams hire folks to look after their cars instead of subcontracting it or leaving it up to the manufacturer is there's a healthy doubt that goes into these things. Is this done right? How is that put together? Is that fitting going to chafe and break and oil comes out or fuel and a fire and all of the things where you go, okay, there's no doubt that something coming off of the, that a Porsche GT3 car is built to the highest of standards. But unless those mechanics who built it are there running it, you then have a crew, actually, that for the team that owns a vehicle that must run it, that has significant voids of knowledge and that has not maybe fitted those parts and pieces together or recognized some things that they might do a little bit different. They might put some heat shielding in here. They might move that away so vibration doesn't kill it. And I'm just speaking in generalisms, Graham, but confidence and doubt, those are two big things. You doubt whatever it is that shows up, and then you build it, rebuild it, put it together on your own so everybody learns about it, but then you gain confidence that the car going out on track that has been through your hands and everyone's hands is something where you can look at that driver while strapping them in and say, yep, you're good to go. So possible, definitely possible to have a car delivered that is turnkey and you don't need to tear it all down and build it up again, but very few teams I can think of would sign up for such a thing. Let me grab one or two more quickly, and we're actually we're about to hit our hour and 90-minute, good Lord, hour and 30-minute clock or 90-minute window. So let me get to one or two here. Then we have a couple of really good ones and fun before we say goodbye. Got a question here from No Escape 3. This might be the first question I've seen come in from you, so if so, thank you, via the WEC Reddit group. It says, I'm always wondering why the cars are never standing on their own wheels in the garage. Is it bad for the suspension? I'm just wondering why the tires are only put on when the car is about to go on track. I'd love to know the reason for that. In a very general sense, you will rarely see a car just sitting on the ground on its race tires or the tires it's meant to use on track for a real prolonged period. Like overnight, for example, you would have tow tires put on if it was staying in the garage. I mean, the tires are round, but sitting there overnight on the tires you'd be using on track, they can go a wee bit oblong, just a little bit. But for the most part, there tends to be a lot of things going on. A lot of work being done. In the WEC, for example, if we're looking at heating of tires and such, it could be a situation where the tires are not ready to go on until the last minute. In IMSA, there are no tire warmers allowed. But again, you rarely have a car, from a timing standpoint, where it's just done and ready to go, sitting on the ground with the tires on it for any real length of time before the next session. So knowing that it must be warmed up, knowing that teams will climb in and run the car through its gears to warm up the transmission oil, warm up the transmission as well, but also make sure everything's functioning correctly. That will tend to happen with the wheels off, too. So just procedurally, there are just very few reasons for the car to be sitting on the ground on its own wheels and tires that are going to be used for the next session, doing nothing. So I think that might cover that one off. Graham, let's go to fun as we look to close this episode. Our pal Andrew Bacca, good old Mr. Baxter, sends in one here that I'm going to pitch your way, and this is piggybacking on the awesome Dinner with Racers e-racing series video that they put out. And Baxter says, you're in charge of designing the e-racing iJournalism expansion. What's one part of the job? What's the one part of the job you would look to make sure to include for us, simulator fans, to truly understand our jobs here as reporters?
It's incredibly important. I was delighted. We're in a brand new press room at Port Ricard this year, brought in here just for the introduction of Formula One last year for the French Grand Prix. And they have taken into account the major thing that has been lacking and lacks in so many press rooms around the world in order for us to do a properly professional job. Not one, not two, but three high-quality coffee machines in that press room. So we're delighted with that. That's the slightly glib answer. The answer really is degree of peace and quiet actually really helps. And that's something we all learnt to our cost that was a problem with Sebring. It was the major problem with Sebring. And that was, I know you felt this as well, MP, you know it's loud. You're not really aware of how much of a problem it is until much later in the day and later in the week, where it does become a major, major problem. So actually peace and quiet is a major part of it. Anything where you're trying to kind of be structured or you're trying to be even creative, then that does get to be a particular problem. Degree of privacy. To have conversations that you need to have with people sometimes that are off the record and slightly searching, and for that matter, that you don't particularly want to be overheard by your competition either. There are plenty of people in a press room who are prepared to be, how can we put this, slightly less industrious than the more hard-working ones amongst us, and just grab the hard work of others. So I think the reality is it is incredibly hard work, mentally hard work. The hours are punishing. I think it's something that many people actually find to be quite a surprise. I've never, ever, ever done a 9-to-5 job in my life. I have to tell you, in terms of the mental capacity you need to do what we do, particularly in the endurance racing side of things, to keep your eyes on 4 races at once and manage a news cycle, and for that matter, manage the efforts of the people around you, is actually, pretty involving in terms of the mental effort it actually takes, and to try to maintain a standard of work and a quality of work, and for that matter, to keep within the kind of the constraints of the timelines that are sent your way. It's a surprise to many when they start to do this, that this is as tough a job as it is. And we have many more people that have not made the cuts down through the years than those that have. And, particularly the younger ones coming in and finding this and sticking with it. And by the way, I'm looking at you, Ryan Kish. I know you're listening in. Young man started to make his way in motorsport journalism. You're making a great start. And taking editing extremely well, not something that necessarily comes naturally to a new generation in the internet age.
Just a quick question here. What the hell's wrong with you, Goodwin? This is the first question in you go serious again. You've done this 2 weeks in a row. Where a fun question, you're like, the time the puppy got run over by the truck and then was lit on fire. What are you doing? All right, Andrew, Mr. Bacca, I think what we meant to say, and I'm going to leave that in. We're going to teach Goodwin a lesson. Good Lord, man. When we say fun, come on. All right, so yeah, this expansion pack, which is absolutely vital, one of those items would be, and this is both ways. This is both the reporter, the interviewer, and on the driver or the person receiving. So this could actually be kind of a fun thing. The first one from the reporting side is asking a fairly basic question, getting 2 to 3 minutes of an answer from the person, and then saying, oh, that's awesome, thanks. So about the question that I just asked, could you answer that? because although the 2 to 3 minutes of our lives that we just lost while you went wherever that was, that is completely useless to me. If the words that I said that you responded to could be the words that you actually respond to, not the thing that you kind of came up with, that'd be cool, because I could use that in an article. The flip side to that is the driver, team owner, whichever, staring back at someone like me or Graham or some others who are hashtag breaking exclusive scoop, and do the best to make a functional question out of the assembly of words that were put in front of them. So it truly goes both ways, where you have the, hey, I understand that you guys have moved to a new brake manufacturer for this round. What did you see? How did you feel with that package in your first session out? And you get stuff, well, the weather, and then the track, and then I saw a squirrel run across, and boy, I could really go for some lunch, and you never really get there. And then you go, that sounds great. By the way, so I hear you went out with a new brake package. And you throw the same thing back at them and hope that you get an answer. The flip side is, you sometimes have drivers and team owners who are staring at you saying, okay, this guy or gal who professes to be a reporter, and maybe a professional one at that, him not good word speak, question, phrase, mouth, thoughts, and stares at you saying, you're going to need to help me out here, buddy. Could you, I think you intended to ask a question. That didn't really happen, though, so could you do that? So that could be fun. There's some people that we know who, on the reporting side, are maybe a little bit socially, personally, interpersonally challenged. There are some drivers that are that way as well. And so one of the really funny things, and I guess this is maybe a little bit cruelly spirited, but when you get to observe those folks trying to interact, and yeah, it's kind of the equivalent of a dog humping your leg, where you go, okay, I know what you're trying to do here. We both know I ain't getting pregnant, so you can have all the fun you want here, but this is going absolutely nowhere. So that's one thing. I'd say the other thing, too, if we're talking about this expansion pack, Andrew, is keep in mind that the amount of information folks sometimes don't want to share creates really interesting answers and or awkward interactions. So you'll say to the head of brand X, I understand you guys are looking at moving into a new class next year. Can you share anything about that? What interests you? Why would you maybe want to go and race in that category? And you get the, well, you know, it's our objective to always race where it's best for us, and as a brand and from a marketing standpoint, activation, and you get this word bath that's maybe 1,000 to 1,500 words long. And if you aren't glued in to everything that's being said, because sometimes, and we'll admit this, our eyes kind of gloss over, or we go to some happier place in our mind where we're not exactly listening to everything that's being said back, even though we ask them to say these things.
I do jigsaw puzzles.
I know you're doing this right now, Graham.
Jigsaw puzzles. Yeah.
Sometimes if you aren't fully locked in and realizing that someone's giving you a long-winded answer that sounds very meaty, but indeed has 0 calories, if you aren't paying attention, that can be fun. When you, okay, man, hey, thanks, really appreciate your time, and you go back and you listen to it and you go, I got nothing. I got, whoo, boy, I have a yeah, comma, to start, and then thanks at the end. In between, I got absolutely nothing. And you realize that the person indeed gave you a 0-calorie experience that contained absolutely nothing, which came from artful, truly artful expression of intentionally dodging the question. And then instead of saying, hey, you know what, no comment, or yeah, not right now, we're not really in a place to comment on that, which would actually be really helpful. Instead, you get the opposite, which is a whole bunch of words, which sounds like an answer but isn't. And so I think that would be my other suggestion for the expansion pack here, where you have a journalist ask a question that might not want to be answered, and then see if they're paying attention or if they go to that happy place, and then have to accept the fact that they were basically played. I've had it happen to me. It happens to me at least once a month. And then also, part of this expansion pack would be that driver, that team owner, the whatever, to have to actually feed complete meaningless BS that comes across as a real answer but says nothing. So the dual sides of this, I think that would be a lot of fun, really, or maybe it wouldn't, but those are the only two things that came to mind here. Let's see. I'm going to answer one other one quickly and then maybe go to what I think, Graham, might be a great final question. And this comes in from WEC Reddit with BHTOOEFR Butoofer. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but there we go. That says, I'll throw this one out. Got any interesting stories about teams that most people wouldn't have heard of? Maybe something in a support series or a back marker that nobody paid attention to? I just taken this one, Graham, because this exact scenario happened while stuck on a flight delay to get home from Circuit of the Americas. Got to spend a couple hours in the Austin airport with some dear friends of mine, Anders Krohn and his good folks at his little media services company. And so sitting there, we got to the topic of someone who's, to my surprise, Joel Feinberg and the Primetime Racing Group or whatever that comes up.
Viper.
Yeah, a few too many times on the show here. Sitting with Anders and his Coforce team, I just wheeled out this one, and it's all true, and I won't make it nearly as graphic. And I'm also fearful I might have mentioned it before, but it just was retold recently. I had to interview Joel about something at the 2008 ALMS race at Mid-Ohio. I think that might have been a combined IndyCar ALMS weekend, but regardless, had to interview him, and he said, well, hey, let's go inside my transporter, my new transporter. And I'm like, oh, great. And I believe Joel was making a lot of money back then and wanting to show it off. And so we went into the transporter, hung a right, went up into what in many cases is either the engineering office or the driver's lounge. It was indeed not an engineering office, Graham Goodwin. It was indeed a driver's lounge. I did not see his co-driver's stuff in there. I think it was reserved exclusively for Joel. And so once we got in there, knowing that a motor racing transporter, right, this big, long trailer plus the tractor that pulls it, it's a heavy thing. There are some weight limits, depending on certain roads and highways that you travel, but for the most part, teams do not intentionally put very heavy things for no reason inside of a motor racing transporter. But we got up to walk straight in, and Joel, very proud, very much a proud peacock, wanted to show me that the table in the driver's lounge was made out of Italian marble. Not light by any means. I forget what the floors were made out of, but the floor was some exquisite material. This part just came to mind. And it might be complete nonsense that I've just made up on my own, or it might be real. I don't remember if there were mirrors or a mirror on the ceiling, but it feels like there might have been or should have been. And so the last thing that stood out was the table, the height of the table, when you would sit down on the little couches and whatever. I just seem to recall the table was a little bit low. Not a lot, but just a little bit low. This grand Italian marble table, which you just would never see in a racing transporter. And Joel then proceeded to tell me, again, being the very proud peacock that he was, that it was a brand new purchase, extremely expensive, specified to his exact criteria. And the table that we were staring at and about to sit down on was specified not only in its material as Italian marble, but also his exact height, the exact height, because at that height, he could prop his girlfriend up and sit her down on the edge, and it was perfect alignment between boy parts and girl parts. So this madman spent a fortune on this transporter and spent a fortune on this driver's lounge with this Italian marble table set to the exact height, and I'm guessing I don't know how. I don't think they would have done it in the manufacturer's showroom, but I'm guessing they somehow came up with that measurement of exactly how high they needed it to be, so that while standing and his girlfriend sitting, they could unify at will in the transporter. And I am sitting there staring at him, going, I thought I was coming here, man, to talk about your choice to use a GT3 Viper and GT2, whatever it was. And instead, I'm getting a lesson on how your race car transportation choices have effectively been made so you and your girlfriend can have sex at the perfect height. That, I'm not saying it's a good or great, it might be a horrible story, but that one stands out as a, man, I've been in the Penske transporter known as RP1, which is probably the most opulent one you'll come across in the paddock. And man, I've had a lot of conversations with Roger Penske in that one. We've never really ventured down that path before. So this is strictly Joel Feinberg gold. And yeah, I mean, he wasn't much of a force to be reckoned with as a driver or whatever, team owner, but man, he brought some character to the good old American Le Mans Series paddock. Let's close on this, Graham. And this one I really enjoyed, and I apologize that I'm following up that stupid story, Kyle, with yours, but I like this, and I figure we'll close on it because we get questions, I think on a greater frequency, wanting to know car racing, but understanding how you and I interact with it, or maybe the jobs that we do, how those things happen to fall into the world of sports car racing. So Kyle Brown says, coming in from Facebook, I'm curious to hear about the different considerations and objectives you must balance as members of the media, particularly as they relate to sharing unpopular or controversial opinions. He asks, how do you balance not burning bridges in the racing community with high readership numbers and driving needed changes in a sport that you seem to love? He says, for context, I recently read an opinion arguing that it was time for a particular NASCAR broadcaster to retire. The article fried the broadcaster so harshly that industry insiders were rushing to the defense of the broadcaster instead of considering the article's main point. I love this question, Kyle. And
it's a great question.
Not just because Graham and I get to ramble on about what we do, but yeah, this is, I mean, you've happened upon something that is, it's certainly a weekly. It comes up at least once a week. I know on my end, Graham. What about for you in this? Ooh, all right. We truth and advertising, truth and reporting versus will anybody talk to us if we're too truthful? What do you think, to start off with a couple of Kyle's questions here?
I'm a firm believer that you've got to earn the right to use the privilege of being able to publish your opinion on a matter. I would reckon, down through the 20 years or so that I've been doing what I do professionally, that the majority of people who've come across our threshold looking to write are principally motivated by expounding their opinion publicly. And I'm not interested in that at all. You have to earn your right to do that. Now, Stephen Kilby reminded me today, he's been working with me and latterly for me for around 7 years now. And it is only remarkably recently that Stephen has been permitted to editorialize and to offer opinion in his writing for Daily Sports Car and for Racer.com, and does so in a very controlled and erudite fashion. You're absolutely right, by the way. There are always going to be business considerations. This is how we earn our living. And ultimately, there are going to have to be ways in which you've got to be just careful about what you do and how you do it. It doesn't mean to say you don't think those things. It doesn't mean to say that you don't offer those opinions in private conversation. But there's a big difference between doing that and being public about it. There's also, by the way, and this probably comes into the example that you actually offer here, a big difference between opinion and cruelty. And that's where, I'm afraid, in the age of social media, things have got a little bit out of hand. This is the point at which it starts to get terribly, terribly personal, and it never, ever should be if actually what you're doing is trying to offer opinion or to execute change. And for me, one of the privileges, and there's many privileges of doing what we do professionally, is the opportunity to influence or inform through offering opinion. That opinion should always be backed up, as far as I'm concerned, by fact. You're absolutely right, MP. There is not a week goes by that you don't consider those very questions. Has it ever stopped me from writing a piece? Absolutely, 100%. It has stopped me from writing things that I feel pretty passionately about. But generally speaking, that's because there's a wider game, there's a longer game, and there might be a better way of achieving that aim by having a private conversation, by having a series of private conversations. There is one, as I've been answering the questions and then listening to MP's answers, that I've been tapping away, starting that conversation right now about a point to do with our sports that concerns me greatly. And yes, I'm looking to help to influence and to shape an outcome. That's another part of what we do. So, yeah, it's a great question. It is absolutely. There are no, as far as I'm concerned, you will have people that will say there are hard and fast rules. There are no hard and fast rules. There are no hard and fast rules at all. You just have to exercise constraint, experience, and a whole lot of common sense. But the thing you should never, ever forget is you are dealing with other human beings. Their emotions, their thoughts, their motivations are not dramatically different from yours and mine. You should always take that into account. And if you're going to offer an opinion, that opinion is talking about someone's actions, someone's choices, someone's outcomes, then you need to take into account their response, and their friends and their colleagues' responses is going to be governed by their emotional reaction too. It's not as simple as that's the right answer. It is a very human business.
Interesting one. I might play this a little bit differently than some of my colleagues. I have one colleague who he's incredibly successful, highly regarded, etc. And his formula, as I have observed it, Graham, involves if there's a criticism to make, if there's someone or something to bark at, where you could stress relationships and you could burn bridges and whatnot, it will happen with team owners. It really won't ever happen with drivers. Just simply not, just stylistically not something he is willing to do. And I find that interesting. But it also makes a little bit of sense as Rocky jumps up yet again, wanting to be fed. If you think about those that we interact with, I would say more often than anyone, it's with drivers. And of those, even if they've done bad things, are horrible people, whatever it is, you might say, oh boy, that was a really underdeveloped concept to try and make that pass here or there, and instead of saying, boy, that was the dumbest move I've ever seen, what an idiot. But when it comes to team owners, yeah, it absolutely knives out, no concern, so on and so forth. And that is, I guess I get that from a self-preservation standpoint. If you are never putting yourself in a position to make the people that you need to speak with most frequently mad at you, then in theory you're not getting into that danger zone that Kyle is mentioning on a professional level. I have observed that, and I've maybe kept that in mind. And this isn't strictly to the controversial opinions or unpopular opinions. It's just saying things that would cause an unsavory reaction. I've been more willing to push in certain situations with drivers, and maybe it's just because I've spent so much of my life working with drivers that I don't put them on a pedestal. But it has hurt at times where drivers will just say, won't take my call, or I hear from someone else, boy, that person's really mad at you. Very rarely hear from the drivers themselves. They'll just wall themselves off. There's the other thing, too, where sometimes you're writing about things that are developing, right? Hey, I have on 100% assured, guaranteed that this is happening, or that this is being explored. Driver A is looking to leave their team and move to another one, and boy, wouldn't that be a bombshell. And I've got it on authority from the driver's dad or mom or manager, and say, okay, well, I'm going to write about this, don't put my name on it, great. And that driver loses their mind. I've got one right now, not in sports car racing, who we're cordial. If there are questions to be asked, they'll be asked, and those answers will be provided. But we used to be pretty good friends. And this person absolutely wrote me off altogether because I said, hey, this is a real thing. If this does come to fruition, it's a big bombshell and could fundamentally change this paddock. And I know it's real. It's not a question as to whether it's real. It's not a rumor. I might present it as there's a rumor, but I know in reality I've confirmed this top to bottom. But, am I sad? Do I look back and say, Graham, I wish I had not have published that piece? No. That's part of it. And I would say, Kyle, that's maybe an acceptance that you can't always be the prettiest guy at the dance. Sometimes doing your job involves being unpopular. And so in this instance of saying things that folks are going to say, boo, you suck. Yeah, you pretty much have a feeling. I file at least one or two of those per month where while I'm writing it, I know, people are going to murder me. Get ready for the crucifixion, man. It's coming. But what's the alternative? Do you not, Graham, write that thing that is true or honest or just a fair representation of whatever's going on? Do you avoid doing that just for the sake of being neutral and vanilla? One of the things you and I criticize among some members of the media that we know is there are folks who you go, hey, what's the last opinion piece you wrote? When's the last time you took a stance on something and wrote about it? And you go, okay, so you're not willing to do that. All right, cool. That's your thing. Great. But you know what? To me, then, you are just a nameless, faceless thing that's pumping out content that probably in time no one's ever going to remember that you did this job, and that kind of bums me out. Then there's a flip side where there are folks who spend all day every day with their flamethrower, and you go, okay, there are no bridges left. You've destroyed them all. There's one guy that comes to mind who was once a very prominent journalist here in North America, and cannot find a job. No one will hire him. And this is a person who on social media, it just talks constant crap about everything. Former employers, fellow members of the media, you name it. This guy has just, despite being an excellent writer of words, is someone who, Kyle, while their words on a professional level really never ventured into the unpopular type area or were, no bridges burned there, but he is such just a self-imploding jackass on a personal level. And I'm just being honest. His friends,
there's got to be balance. There's got to be
his
balance.
Friends are constantly telling him, get off social media. He's got no jobs.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, the reality is it is a balance. Everything about life is a balance. There are going to be moments when the greater good is served by taking that risk. There's equally well going to be probably a rather larger number of occasions when you should just shut the hell up and let matters take their own course to a degree. Social media, it's not everybody's bag. It's not something everybody can do in a way that they find a constructive way forward. And so many people that I've seen, in all sorts of areas of life, just cannot manage to balance, to provide that balance that means that they can stay constructive. And they certainly can't deal with the response that actually offering that opinion gives them, because obviously the rest of the world, the entire planet with access to the internet, has got the opportunity to immediately offer a response. And that, I think, is something people who've been used to having access perhaps through the print media and having, a letters column that might come a month later in response to it, simply do not have the capacity, either the time capacity or the mental capacity, to respond to the tsunami of opinion that comes rolling back their way. And this is where we now are in the 21st century, is that social media gives everybody, you, me, everybody out there, the opportunity to offer an opinion to everybody that expresses themselves through social media themselves. You've got to be so careful about the moments you choose to take a stand, and you damn well better be sure that if you choose to do that on an issue of any kind of moment whatsoever, you've got a factual basis for your opinion, or you're prepared to stand by the fact that it is just an opinion. They're the things you've now got to take into account, not just whether or not you've actually got the courage of your convictions.
So there you go. It's an interesting thing, Kyle, where
it is.
There's a couple of just known things that are very simple. If someone wanted to write items that just strictly generate clicks, hey, here's a little controversial-y type thing, or a wildly speculative thing, again, that formula is well known. Those that trade in that kind of stuff, Graham, there's
terrifically boring. Terrifically boring.
If there's some truth,
it's terrifically boring.
If there's something there,
yeah. But I mean, if that's all you do, and that's what you pump out time after time after time, and that's all you do, then I'm really sorry, you're an imposter in a sport. All you're looking for is that one. I mean, I can recall a conversation, in fact, at Sebring with Scott Atherton, and this comes the nub of it, actually. And he turned to me and he said, and we were talking, by the way, it's something I've got on my list of things still to write from Sebring, to do with Class 1 cars and the BMW opinion that we've talked about on the show before. And what Scott said to me, and it was absolutely pinpoint accurate, was just, please don't use a carefully selected part of a sentence as the key to a story you're writing, because that wouldn't be reflective of this particular issue's importance in the wider debate. Spot on, Scott. Spot on. That's what I need from you, is don't let me go away from that conversation believing that there's a possibility that this might happen, because it's not going to happen. It is an important part of the wider debate, but that's what you need. You need someone who is skilled in terms of the way in which he's presenting his arguments and his position, but is also prepared to be trusting of you to make sure that you go away from that conversation without misunderstanding where things stand. I'm perfectly happy with that. I'm perfectly happy being treated like a professional and being treated like an adult. And I love working with people, whether it's team owners, drivers, race organisers, rule makers, who get that too. What is difficult is when, as you quite rightly said, MP, is when people try to guard that with pretty well prepared, tsunami of words, but actually that don't say anything. That's not going to be any use to anybody. There are going to be moments when that's necessary, but when that's all people do, it makes life terribly, terribly difficult and tiresome, and leaves the door open for, frankly, those imposters in the business that are just interested in the difference between a story that gets 30 likes and 300,000 clicks because they've said something outrageous that might have a scintilla of truth somewhere on the fringes of it, but presents a completely inaccurate view of the wider the wider context. Luckily, I operate in a niche sport where the vast majority of the people that take the time to look into the detail that we provide get it to some degree. And we see that week in, week out with the questions we get the week in sports cars. There's a hunger for more information, and we're very happy to provide it in very many ways. But I think there's a crisis in our part of the business right now. The crisis, put aside the bullshit that is written about fake news. There is a lot of fake news out there, but put aside for a moment this nonsense about the enemies of the people and all that rubbish that's doing the rounds on both sides of the Atlantic right now. The reality right now is people have got to decide what they want. Do you want quality or do you want now? Because you can't have both. You cannot have the kind of quality, the kind of detail that people want and have a hunger for, the immediacy of it in the modern age. You can't have that consistently every hour of every day and expect that level of quality to be kept up. Sometimes you've got to wait. You might have to wait a minute, 10 minutes, an hour, half a day, or a day. But if you're going to go with the guys who consistently provide you with, the 3-paragraph, here's what you really need to know, you're going to be missing out on the detail that might actually be the part of the story you're interested in.
We opened with the soapbox. We've closed with the soapbox. I admonish Graham for taking a fun question too seriously. I probably said some epically stupid things. And you know what? That's a normal week in the week in sports cars. And we're going to set sail to this one, my friend. I need to get to work. I'm going to be up all night, and I'm going to get bonked over the head by my wife for working too late. So we better set sail to this lovely little podcast. Well, actually, you all are the judge whether it's lovely or not. We definitely thank you for giving us this platform to answer your questions and opine and step up on them little boxes of soap and ramble on. I'm done. You done, I hope? Should we say thank you to Cooper Tires and the Justice Brothers and then tell folks we'll meet up again next week?
We most certainly should. It's a special kind of company that backs the very special people, the special type of people that do these things week in, week out. And yes, indeed, thank you very much indeed to Cooper Tires and to the Justice Brothers, fine fellows all. And I hope to be on a rather better connection when I join you next week, back from Shea Goodwin, and that's not like Shea Adam, that's Shea as in the French side of things, after making my way back home after what will be still a very busy week here in the south of France.
I'm just saying, if we don't have frogs in the background going forward, I'll be very disappointed. I don't know how you need to get those across. I don't know how you smuggle them back home, but we need frogs in the background, Graham.
We should make clear, by the way, we are talking about the amphibians of the wetlands beyond here, not the neighbours.